Greece and Turkey have been embroiled in a long-standing dispute over maritime borders. Tensions have escalated since summer 2020, when Turkey actively embarked on searching for oil and gas in maritime zones, not yet delimited between the two states. Successive military exercises in the Mediterranean and the Aegean Seas have contributed to sustaining the tension in the region. Dialogue between the two states has not led to a positive outcome yet.
The Cyprus problem is one of the main areas of tension between Greece and Turkey. Both countries are, since the independence of the island in 1960, guarantor powers of the territorial integrity and constitutional order of the Republic and keep troops on the island. Following a Greek coup which triggered the Turkish intervention and partition of the island in 1974, Ankara became the key supporter of the separatist entity in the north. The Cyprus conflict and the inability to resolve it, as well as the Turkish tactics in or around the island, inevitably contribute to the distrust between Greece and Turkey. Similarly, the Greek-Turkish disputes over inter alia the Aegean enhance the Greek-Cypriot distrust towards Turkey as a potential peaceful and non-intervening actor in Cyprus, even in a post-settlement environment. The hydrocarbon discoveries opened the door for a change in the regional security architecture, where Cyprus and Greece have a much more active role to play. This new reality has been increasing tensions between them and Turkey and the Turkish Cypriots.
How is the Greek-Turkish dispute perceived by the both communities in Cyprus, and how are their interests affected by it?
Well, let's start with the second part, the first part of the question about the perception of the Greco-Turkish disputes. The Greek Cypriot side obviously considers Turkey to be on the wrong side of history or on the wrong side of the developments, given that it is evident that for the Greek Cypriots that Turkey is violating the Greek FIR, the Greek exclusive economic zone, and in general shows some aggressive behavior. Now, of course, this has an impact on the Cyprus problem as well, and that the main part of the impact is trust. It's all about trust. The Greco-Turkish disputes play into the already very internalized threats about who is the enemy other. And this also makes the issue of security even more important and a bigger, stronger red line for Greek Cypriots. And I think we should also consider how the Greco-Turkish dispute is seen today in the era of social media, where we see that every Turkish action is highlighted and reminds of the Turkish aggression, and every Greek defensive action reminds and highlights the Greek readiness to defend the Greek nation as a whole, not just the Greek state. Of course, there are also concerns. One of the main concerns that Greek Cypriots have is that any escalation in the Greek area, let's say the Aegean or off of Crete, or even up in the north, can have spillover in the Eastern Mediterranean and Cyprus. And this is an issue that is being discussed. And this is also the main reason why we see some discussion about the need to revitalize the single area defense doctrine, the enniαίο αμυντικό δόγμα in Greek. So it does have an impact, which revolves around trust, security, and the fear of spillover. That's, of course, on the Greek Cypriot side. In terms of the Turkish Cypriot community, there's also an issue of trust, and namely that Greece will always play the game of the Greek Cypriots. It will always support the Greek Cypriots. The fear is that the current conflicts will toughen the positions of the two sides, making a settlement even less likely. And this is, of course, a concern only for the Turkish Cypriots who want a solution. The ones who aim for a two-state solution or the continuation of the status quo, then that might not be such a negative development after all. So I believe that it is important to distinguish between the left parties and the left-oriented individuals in the Turkish Cypriot community who are more eager for a bizonal, bicommunal federation, as opposed to the more right-wing parties and individuals who prefer the two-state solution or are much more comfortable with the status quo.
What is the impact of the Cyprus problem on the Greek-Turkish dispute, and how does it affect Greek-Turkish relations?
Well, the Greek government has diachronically supported the Republic of Cyprus positions, and it argues that it will always support a settlement that is agreed by the Cypriots. So the Cyprus problem in general, with some exceptions, was not a particularly major issue in the Greek political radar, in a way. At the same time, however, the lack of settlement maintains an area of tension and contention between Greece and Turkey, which cannot be ignored, at least on an official level and at the Greek Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we can also not ignore the fact that Greece was one of the primary reasons that the Republic of Cyprus joined the EU. So we cannot question the support that the Greek Cypriots have received from Greece, just like we cannot ignore the support that Greek Cypriots have in the negotiations. So the escalation and de-escalation efforts primarily over the Aegean was not Cyprus specific. Recently, however, given what happened in the Eastern Mediterranean and the hydrocarbons, Greece realized that the Turkish behavior in the Cypriot exclusive economic zone was not irrelevant to Greece, given that Turkey does not accept that islands have full exclusive economic zones, and this creates several issues for Greece as well. And we have seen it not only with the case of Castellorizo, which is a small islet, of course, but also the case of Greece and Rhodes. So now, for Greece, it is easier to link Turkey's behavior in the Aegean and off of Crete to what is happening in Cyprus. So we see a stronger link between the two cases. Furthermore, the fact that the status quo in Cyprus after the hydrocarbons discovery is no longer static brought the Cyprus problem again to the surface and the discussion of the Greco-Turkish relations. And these developments in Cyprus started to play very well in the Greek discourses regarding the aggressive behavior of Turkey that I mentioned earlier.
How have the two communities in Cyprus been aligned with the two conflicting parties during the last 20 years, and what were the implications of those alignments?
Well, again, in both communities, we have to distinguish between the leftist and the right-wing parties and their supporters. But generally speaking, in the Greek Cypriot community, we see a full alignment with Greece, and they consider that, that Turkey's actions are against the international law and international agreements. And essentially what happens with the disputes in Greece is fully in line with the overall Turkish behavior as far as the Greek Cypriots' perceptions are concerned. The fact that the Republic of Cyprus now is in line with the Greek position does not really have an impact on the Greco-Turkish relations. This is something that is expected in a way. And now, when it comes to periods where there is significant escalation, Cyprus again is fully aligned with Greece, as any Turkish aggressive behavior adds to the Republic of Cyprus argumentation in regards to what is happening in its own areas. Where it becomes more interesting is in areas where we have de-escalation efforts and welcomes such de-escalation efforts, but there's always a concern that Cyprus might be left out from these efforts. The concern is that any Greek-Turkish de-escalation and normalization should not be at the expense of the Cyprus problem.
What are the strategies devised by the Cyprus Republic and the Turkish Cypriot community towards the resolution of the conflict, and how were they applied?
Generally speaking, there is no concrete strategy in the sense that, as I mentioned earlier, what happens between Greece and Turkey is much bigger than what happens in Cyprus. So Cyprus is a subset of the Greco-Turkish relations, not necessarily the other way around. And this was the case until recently, at least. Since the discovery, again, of the hydrocarbons in this area, the developments of bilateral and trilateral relations among neighboring states, there is much more room for coordination and a more clear strategic path for the Republic of Cyprus and Greece. And the coordination and strategies are not necessarily developed in a zero-sum framework whereby Turkey is excluded. However, the absence of Turkey from the agreements, and essentially Turkey as being the only actor that drives the tension in the Eastern Mediterranean, and in general in the sub-regional security complex of this area, creates a path for these collaborations to have an impact on the security dynamics and subsequently on the Greco-Turkish relations and disputes. So we should look at these trilateral and bilateral agreements between Cyprus and Greece and other third countries like Egypt and Israel as a strategic path towards creating a different kind of sub-regional security complex in the area. At this point, it's worth noting that we should not mistake these agreements with military alliances. They're far from it. On a political level, however, these collaborations do provide significant support to Greece and Cyprus, of course. And this, in turn, provides a strategic path to strengthen these relations with the infusion of other countries outside, such as France, such as the US lately, and even the United Arab Emirates is a good example of how other states can jump in and contribute to the strengthening of these collaborations. The same can be said about the military drills. Even though these are not military alliances, the military drills among the regional actors that I just mentioned have their own symbolic significance. This does not mean that they will defend either Greece or Cyprus in case of an actual military conflict, but politically speaking, such drills give a very strong signal and provide the path for deeper strategic coordination that does not need to be limited to military issues. As we have seen with the case of Israel, we have more collaboration on the political level, on research level, on tourism, and so on. We see more investments now between France and Greece, for instance. So frequently, these changes in the strategic path create positive spillovers in other areas, which, however, also highlight the exclusion of Turkey, and they could potentially inadvertently highlight the impact of the Greco-Turkish dispute.
Thank you very much for this interesting interview.
You're most welcome.